Winterfell was peaceful, its snow-covered towers standing strong against the cold winds. Lord Eddard Stark, Warden of the North, had just received a raven from King Robert Baratheon. The king was asking him to come to King's Landing and serve as Hand of the King, but this time, Ned Stark refused. He remembered the dangers of court politics, the snakes in the capital, and his duty to the north. "My place is here," he said to his wife Catelyn, who nodded in agreement. King Robert, disappointed but trusting Ned's decision, appointed someone else, Sir Barristan Selmy, for the role of Hand. This small change twisted the path of history in a big way. Meanwhile, in the west, Tywin Lannister sat in Casterly Rock, angry and insulted. He had hoped that by luring Ned south, chaos would break out in the north. Tywin always played the long game. He saw Ned Stark as a man of honor, and men like that could be broken, manipulated, or killed in the Game of Thrones. But if Ned wouldn't play the game in King's Landing, then Tywin would bring the game to the north. Ned kept ruling the north as usual. His son Robb trained daily with a sword, while Arya caused mischief and Jon Snow prepared to ride for the wall. Yet in the shadows, ravens flew. Tywin Lannister began sending gold and whispers to old enemies of House Stark, the Boltons, the Karstarks, and even some southern lords who hated the honor-bound Northmen. He knew that dividing the north from within was smarter than fighting it from the outside. Months passed. King Robert died in a hunting accident. Some said it was a Lannister plot, but no one could prove it. Prince Joffrey, cruel and young, was crowned king. Cersei pulled the strings from behind the throne. The capital became darker, more dangerous. Ned Stark, still in Winterfell, felt the weight of the South creeping toward him. Then came the first attack. A group of Bolton men, secretly loyal to Tywin, raided a small northern village near the Dreadfort. They blamed wildlings, but Ned's instincts told him otherwise. He sent ravens to the Boltons, demanding answers. Rose Bolton replied with polite lies, but his silence afterward was louder than words. In Casterly Rock, Tywin smiled. His plan was working. While the realm believed the war would rise between Stannis Baratheon and Joffrey, Tywin opened a second front, one deep inside the north. He underestimated one thing, though. The Starks were not so easily broken. As more minor lords were swayed by gold and fear, Ned called his bannermen to Winterfell. Robb sat beside him during the meetings, learning the burden of command. "If it comes to war, we must fight as one," Ned told them. Jon Snow had taken his vows at the Wall, and even he began to hear whispers of Lannister coin being sent to the wildlings, of strange movements beyond the Wall. Tywin's reach was longer than anyone thought. The war had not started yet, but the fire had been lit. Ned Stark stood on the battlements of Winterfell one evening, snow falling gently. He watched the flames in the distance. Another village burned. He clenched his fists. "If the lion wants war," he muttered, "he'll get the wolf's teeth." Snowstorm raged through the north, but Winterfell burned brighter with purpose. Ned Stark had summoned his bannermen, and the great hall was filled with voices, some loyal, some doubtful. Lords from House Manderly, House Glover, and House Umber sung beside him, but the Karstarks hesitated, and the Boltons, as expected, sent no reply. "Rose Bolton has grown too quiet," Ned said, his voice steady, though heavy with concern. "Quiet men are the most dangerous." Robb sat beside his father, listening closely, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. He wasn't a boy anymore. The threat was real, and he could feel it in the cold winds. War was coming, not from the south this time, but from within their own land. Meanwhile, in the Dreadfort, Roose Bolton read a letter sealed with a golden lion's head. Tywin Lannister's words were sharp as blades. "Create chaos. Strike fear. Make the North bleed itself." Roose wasn't loyal to anyone but himself. He didn't care for the Lannisters or the Starks, but he knew a divided North could be conquered and rewarded. That night, Roose sent his bastard Ramsay Snow on a mission. Ramsay smiled, cruel and eager, as he gathered men dressed like bandits. Their target wasn't soldiers, it was families, farms, and fear. Within days, 5 more villages were burned. Children were taken. Women vanished. Survivors whispered of a monster in the snow with pale eyes and a sick grin. Ned's rage grew colder than the winter winds. "These are not wildlings," he said to his council. "These are men trying to make us turn on each other." But fear was spreading. Lords began locking their gates, hoarding supplies, and questioning each other. Tywin's plan to fracture the north from the inside was working faster than expected. He didn't need to send a single Lannister soldier north. He just had to light the match and watch the wolves tear each other apart. In the south, King Joffrey was growing mad with power. Sir Barristan Selmy, as Hand, did his best to control the court, but Cersei whispered poison into her son's ears. When word reached King's Landing that Ned Stark had raised his bannermen, Cersei saw an opportunity. "Send ravens to the Karstarks and the Ryswells," she told Littlefinger. "Promise them lands, gold, and titles if they help break the Starks." Littlefinger smirked. "Chaos is a ladder, Your Grace, and the North is slipping." Back in Winterfell, Maester Luwin handed Ned a sealed letter. It came from Jon Snow, now a sworn brother of the Night's Watch. The message was short but clear. "The wildlings are restless. Someone is sending them steel and gold. We fear a greater hand moves them." Ned's heart sank. Tywin was not only poisoning the North, he was stirring the wildlings too. He realized that war wouldn't come in the form of knights and banners. It would be shadowed in raids, betrayals, and whispers in the dark. He sent trusted men to secure the loyalty of his bannermen. Robb was sent to White Harbor with Lord Wyman Manderly to rally support. The younger Stark sons, Bran and Rickon, were moved to a hidden village for their safety. Catelyn grew worried, but stood strong by Ned's side. "Let the lion come," she whispered. "The wolf will bite." Then came the moment that would ignite true war. A scout returned to Winterfell, wounded and barely breathing. The Dreadfort has fallen silent. Smoke, black smoke, rises from its walls. No banners, just ash. Ned's eyes narrowed. Ramsay had turned even on his own home. A rebellion had begun, but it wasn't a Lannister army knocking at Winterfell's gates. It was betrayal from the North itself. And still, Tywin sat in Casterly Rock, sipping wine, smiling. His message was clear. "You refused to play the game in King's Landing, Stark, but the game came to you." Winterfell had become a fortress. The gates were sealed, guards doubled, and ravens sent across every corner of the North. Ned Stark stood taller than ever. But behind his strong face, a storm brewed. His homeland was turning into a battlefield, and the enemy wore familiar faces. It was no longer about honor, it was survival. Reports came in like cold daggers. The Dreadfort burned from within, not by enemy hands, but Ramsay's own madness. Survivors spoke of screaming halls, flayed men hanging from walls, and Ramsay declaring himself warden of the true North. He had taken what was once his father's seat and turned it into a house of horror. Rose Bolton had disappeared, vanished without a word. Some said Ramsay had killed him. Others believed Roose had fled, realizing that even he couldn't control the beast he'd raised. Ned gathered his council once again. "This is no longer about House Lannister," he said, eyes cold and voice sharp. "This is about a cancer inside the North, fed by gold from the South, yes, but grown from our own soil." Robb returned from White Harbor. His face changed. Lord Wyman Manderly had pledged his support, but warned that smaller houses feared being caught between wolves and lions. "We stand with you, Lord Stark," he'd said, "but we must not lose. If Winterfell falls, the North will never rise again." Ned knew time was slipping. He had to strike before Ramsay gathered more power, before more Northern lords were tempted by gold and fear. So he marched. 10,000 Northern men moved through the snow under the direwolf banners. Robb rode beside his father, sword strapped tight, but it was his heart that felt heavier than steel. "Are we doing the right thing?" he asked one night by the fire. "We're fighting our own now." Ned didn't answer right away. He stared into the flames, as if searching for the faces of old kings and dead brothers. "When a tree is infected, Robb, he finally said, "you cut the rot, or you lose the whole forest." Meanwhile, Ramsay waited in the Dreadfort, confident and bloodthirsty. He'd renamed it the Red Fort, a mockery soaked in the screams of those who dared speak against him. He had men, desperate, cruel ones, but he lacked loyalty. Every coin from Tywin helped buy more swords, but not love. Only fear, and fear could break. The first clash happened near the Weeping Hill. A Bolton loyal force led by Sir the Horsebane Umber ambushed Ned's scouts, but Ned had expected treachery. He had sent a decoy party, and when the Boltons moved in, they were surrounded by Stark cavalry. The snow turned red that day, and when it cleared, Horsebane was among the dead. Ravens flew from the battlefield carrying one message: the North fights for Winterfell. At the wall, Jon Snow felt the winds change too. Word of northern conflict reached Castle Black, and Jon feared for his family. But something darker stirred beyond the wall. Wildlings had begun to unite strange, violent groups under a single banner. A golden lion clawed into tree bark. "Lannister gold," Jon whispered. "Even here." Back in the south, Tywin Lannister read the reports with amusement. He hadn't expected Ned Stark to be so quick. "He's too honorable for this kind of war," he said to Cersei. But even wolves learn to kill differently when they're cornered. Cersei, however, was growing impatient. Why not send an army north and crush them? Tywin shook his head. "No, let them bleed each other dry. When the north is weak and divided, we'll take it without spilling a drop of our own blood." But Tywin had underestimated one thing: Ned's rage. The march to the Dreadfort was fast and ruthless. Ned didn't burn villages. He didn't punish common folk. But every Bolton banner he found was torn down and replaced with the direwolf. One by one, the smaller lords began switching sides. Loyalty returned not from fear, but from the belief that the Starks would not bend or break. Ramsay, sensing the noose tighten, sent a raven. The letter was short and full of madness. "Come, Star, come see what I've done with your north." Ned read it once, then he threw it into the fire. The snow fell harder now, thick and angry, like the gods themselves were watching. Ned Stark's army moved slow but steady toward the Dreadfort. Each mile closer, the sky darkened, and the cold bit deeper, not just in the air, but in the hearts of every man who had heard what Ramsay Snow had done. The villages around the Dreadfort were empty. Houses stood with doors ripped open, bloodstains on the snow, no signs of life. One village had children's toys scattered near a burned barn. Another had dogs starving, wild, and feasting on corpses. Even seasoned warriors among the Stark host turned their eyes away. "This isn't war," one said quietly. "This is something worse." Robb rode in silence, anger swelling inside him. He wanted to crush Ramsay, burn his name from history, make him pay for every scream heard in the north. But his father's calm never wavered. Ned Stark didn't speak of revenge. He spoke of justice. That difference kept the army together. One night, while the men rested beneath snow-covered trees, a hooded figure approached their camp. The guards almost cut him down, but the man dropped to his knees and raised his arms. "I bring news," he gasped, from inside the Dreadfort. Ned stepped forward. "Who are you?" The man lifted his hood, revealing a bruised face and frostbitten fingers. "Maester Windermere, I served House Bolton. I escaped through the tunnels, barely." Ned's jaw clenched. "What did you see?" Maester Windermere took a shaky breath. "He's flaying them. Every day. Some of your bannermen captured scouts. He feeds their fingers to his dogs. He keeps their banners as trophies. Ramsay has no honor, my lord. He's made himself king of ash." The camp fell silent. No one spoke. No one breathed. Ned gave the order the next morning. They would attack at dawn. The battle began with a wall of fire. Ned had ordered oil to be spread in the tree lines. When Ramsay's men emerged, laughing and wild-eyed, they were greeted with flames and arrows. The screams echoed through the frozen woods. But Ramsay was no fool. He had prepared for siege. The walls of the Dreadfort were high, cold and ancient. As Ned's army surrounded it, Ramsay stood on the battlements, arms wide, smiling like a man born from madness. "Come, Stark," he shouted. "Come see what's left of your north." Robb wanted to charge the gate, but Ned held him back. "Let him scream. His madness is his weakness." Instead of attacking blindly, Ned waited. 3 days of cold, 3 nights of tension. Ramsay's men grew restless mercenaries who only fought for coin, not loyalty. And inside those walls, fear spread faster than fire. Ramsay's own men began to turn on each other. Hunger set in. Trust died. On the fourth night, the gates opened, not by force, but betrayal. One of Ramsay's lieutenants had had enough. He'd slit the throats of the guards and let Ned's men in through the side tunnels. What followed was not a battle, it was a reckoning. Ned Stark led the charge himself. He didn't ride. He walked sword in hand, eyes full of frost. Robb followed beside him. The halls of the Dreadfort ran red. Ramsay's hounds were released, but even they fled from the scent of death. And then, at last, Ned found him. Ramsay stood in the great hall, surrounded by the bodies of his own guards. Blood on his face, a blade in each hand. "Did you come for justice, Stark?" he said, laughing. "Or did you come because you liked the smell of fire and blood too?" Ned didn't answer. He raised his sword. Ramsay lunged, but it wasn't a fight. It was a sentence. Steel met flesh. The bastard of Bolton fell. The war inside the north was over, but the war beyond was just beginning. The Dreadfort stood silent for the first time in months. Smoke curled from its towers, not from burning bodies or screams, but from clean fires lit by Stark men. The blood had been washed from the floors. Ramsay's banners were torn down, his hounds put down one by one. The nightmare was over. Ned Stark didn't celebrate. He ordered a quiet burial for the northern men who died, and a mass burning for the traitors. "Let their names be forgotten," he said coldly. "They served a monster, and they'll not be remembered with honor." Robb remained quiet, but there was something different in his eyes now. He had seen too much death, too much cruelty. This wasn't the war he had imagined in childhood stories. This was darker, and it was far from over. As the Dreadfort was cleaned and secured, ravens flew once again, this time from the Eyrie. A message from Catelyn's sister, Lysa Arryn. She warned of a troubling rumor. "The Lannisters know the north is weak. Tywin is gathering men at Harrenhal. They mean to strike soon." Ned stared at the parchment for a long time. He had defeated a monster, born in his own house. But now the lion moved again. Tywin had let the north bleed itself, and now that its wounds were fresh, he would come like a vulture. And worse, King's Landing had declared House Bolton traitors, but not once had they condemned Ramsay's crimes. Cersei and Tywin had used the bastard of the Dreadfort as a tool and discarded him once his work was done. "I was never fighting just Ramsay," Ned muttered. "I was fighting Tywin's shadow." Robb approached his father that night. "The men are tired. Many are wounded. If Tywin attacks now, we won't wait for him to choose the field," Ned said. "We march south." Robb blinked. "Into the Riverlands." Ned nodded. "The Tullys are still our kin. And if Tywin wants to bring war, we'll meet him before he reaches northern soil. This is no longer just a northern matter." Meanwhile, in Casterly Rock, Tywin Lannister read the reports with narrowed eyes. Ramsay was dead, the Dreadfort had fallen, and Ned Stark, honorable, stubborn Ned, had not only survived, but struck back with brutal precision. "He's not as soft as I thought," Tywin said to Sir Kevan. "He's learned something dangerous, how to fight without mercy." Cersei, furious, demanded blood. "March on Winterfell, burn it to the ground, kill every wolf pup still breathing." Tywin ignored her rage. "No, that would unite the North. Let them come south. Let them walk into the fire on our terms." And so the pieces began to move again. Ned Stark led his army into the Riverlands. On the way, he passed villages already suffering under Lannister raids. Smoke rose from burned farms. Broken men cried over graves. The war had already begun, only now the North would answer it. They met the Lannisters first near the ruins of Moat Cailin. A scouting party, armored in red and gold, burned a trading caravan meant for White Harbor. Robb personally led the attack, cutting them down with fury. His blade was fast, precise, but there was no joy in his victory. "They kill merchants now?" he muttered, wiping blood from his sword. "Is this the kind of war they fight?" Ned looked at his son. "The Lannisters don't fight wars, Robb. They break countries." And across the narrow sea, word reached another exile. Daenerys Targaryen sat in a city of slavers, dragons growing larger by the day, when a whisper reached her ears. "The North bleeds. The Lion strikes. Westeros is tearing itself apart." She smiled. "Good. Let them burn each other. I'll rise from the ashes." Back in the Riverlands, as Ned approached River Run, banners began to rise beside his. The Tully Fish, the Manderley Merman, even House Blackwood and House Lannister sent men. A new host was forming, but Ned Stark didn't smile. He knew the truth now. He hadn't avoided the Game of Thrones by staying in the north. The game had come to him, and he was now one of its deadliest players. The banners of the wolf and fish flew high over the Riverlands, but the air was heavy with tension. River Run had welcomed Ned Stark like kin, but there was no time for warm greetings. War had already crossed their borders. Villages burned, fields were salted, and Tywin's riders had begun to test the edges of their territory like hounds sniffing for weakness. Inside the walls of River Run, Ned stood with Lord Hoster Tully and his bannermen. Robb stood to his father's right, silent but observant, while Catelyn rejoined her family with a heavy heart. "They're close," Lord Hoster warned. "Lannister forces have reached the Red Fork. They won't strike directly. Tywin will try to bleed us first." Ned nodded. "Let him come. He wants to test our patience, but we won't give him time." It was then that a raven arrived, black wings slicing through the grey sky. The letter it carried changed everything. From the Vale came news of betrayal. Lysa Arryn had shut her gates. She would not send men. She would not join the fight. Her message was short and filled with paranoia. "I will not throw the Vale into war for the North's cause. My son is the future." Catelyn's face turned pale as she read her sister's words. "She's abandoned us. She was never truly with us," Ned said, jaw clenched. "She fears war more than she loves family." The blow was painful. The blow was painful. The Vale could have turned the tide. But now, it was another locked door. Still, Ned moved forward. That night, he called a war council. Maps were unrolled, markers placed. Tywin had divided his army, one half moving west to sack Tully lands, the other holding near Harrenhal. Jaime Lannister, the Kingslayer himself, was rumored to lead that second force. "We split them," Ned said. "We'll bait Jaime east with a small force, then strike Tywin hard and fast in the west." Robb frowned. "If we fail to split them, we'll be crushed." "We won't fail," Ned replied, "because this time we don't play fair. We fight like the Lannisters taught us." It was a chilling thought, Lord Stark, the honorable wolf, speaking of deception. But war had changed him. The next morning, under cover of fog, a small unit led by Robb departed River Run. They carried false banners, making it seem like the main host had divided. Spies were allowed to see them. Word would reach Jaime, and just as Ned predicted, the Kingslayer took the bait. Meanwhile, Ned led the main host west, 10,000 men, marching in silence through war-torn fields. On the fifth day, they reached the ruins of a village near the Tumblestone. Burned homes, charred corpses, and a sigil carved into the wood, the Golden Lion of House Lannister. Robb turned away from the sight. "They kill without reason." Ned said nothing. He stood among the ashes for a moment, then bent down and picked up a child's doll, half-burned. He looked at Robb. "Half-burned. They want us to become monsters too." And yet, when the battle finally came, it was Tywin who was unprepared. Ned struck at night. The Stark host descended on Tywin's encampment near the Golden Tooth. The Lannister guards were drunk, believing their enemy still wandered near Riverrun. They were wrong. Wolves fell upon lions with fury. It was no siege, it was slaughter. Ned fought in the front, blade flashing like ice. His men followed his lead, and before dawn, Tywin's camp lay in ruin. But Tywin himself escaped. He fled with only a handful of guards, vanishing into the hills before Ned could reach him. Still, the damage was done. Supplies were taken, morale broken, and Tywin's aura of control shattered. For the first time, the lion bled. News of the victory spread fast. The North and Riverlands celebrated. Robb was called the Young Wolf for the first time. Songs were sung, but Ned forbade any feast. "This is not the end," he said. "Tywin Lannister is wounded, not dead, and a wounded lion is twice as dangerous." As night fell, Ned stood alone under the stars. He had saved the North. He had broken a piece of the lion's teeth, but deep in his heart, he knew what came next. Cersei still ruled from the Iron Throne. Joffrey wore a crown soaked in lies, and in the east, the dragons were waking. The North cheered. The Riverlands sang songs of the wolf who bit the lion, but Ned Stark remained cold-eyed and silent. Victory had come, yes, but not peace. Tywin Lannister was alive. Joffrey still sat on the Iron Throne, and the storm ahead would be worse than anything he had faced yet. Back in Riverrun, ravens brought new troubles. Cersei had declared Ned Stark a traitor to the crown. A royal decree was sent across the Seven Kingdoms. Lord Eddard Stark has raised arms against the crown. All loyal subjects are to denounce him or be treated as enemies of the realm. And with it, a darker move. Sansa Stark was taken hostage. A letter from King's Landing, penned in her delicate hand, clearly forced, was sent to Ned. "Father, please, bend the knee. The king only wants peace. I am safe, but you must stop this war." Catelyn's hands trembled as she read it. Ned stared at the words, knowing the girl's voice was not in them. This was Cersei's doing. Robb slammed his fist into the table. "We have to go to King's Landing. We take the capital. We end this now." "No," Ned said firmly. "That's what they want. They want us to charge in blind. But they have Sansa." Ned's voice turned cold. "Then we move smarter. I won't lose another child to that throne." His face hardened. "We gather allies, real allies, and we cut the head off the snake." That meant one thing: the Bew, the Reach, the Stormlands and Dawn regions untouched by the war so far. Cersei had kept them busy with politics, not blades, but if one of them turned, the Lannisters would crumble. Ned sent Raven's secret ones to Doran Martell in Sunspear and to Stannis Baratheon, now hidden away in Dragonstone. He offered truth in exchange for alliance, the truth about Joffrey's birth, about Robert's bloodline, about Cersei's incest and the false king that now ruled. He sent the same truth to the Iron Islands, though with less trust. That on Greyjoy had always been dangerous, but perhaps with the right bait, he could be made useful or at least distracted. Back at the wall, Jon Snow stood atop the frozen ramparts, staring into the dark beyond. Strange fires had been seen on the horizon, wildlings gathering, shadows moving, but worse than wildlings, whispers came of white shapes in the snow, things that didn't bleed, didn't burn, and didn't die. Maester Aemon had sent word to Winterfell, but Winterfell was no longer home. Jon's thoughts were divided, his duty to the Night's Watch, and the war pulling his family into the fire. He wanted to ride south, to fight beside Robb, to save his sisters. But he had sworn an oath. "Your war is coming too," Samwell said quietly beside him. "Just not with swords, you can see." Jon tightened his grip on Longclaw. Meanwhile, in King's Landing, Cersei played her own game. With Sansa in her grasp, she controlled the image of the war. She painted Ned as a rebel. She sent gold to the newspapers, had bards sing of Joffrey's greatness, and planted fear in the hearts of the small folk. "The North wants to rule all," they said. "The Wolf wants the Iron Throne." But something unexpected happened. The small folk didn't hate Ned. They remembered the last time he was in the capital. The quiet, honorable man who tried to bring justice when Jon Arryn died. The one who knelt before Robert Baratheon, not a throne. The one who never lied, even when it cost him. Whispers began to rise in Flea Bottom. Maybe Stark was right. And in Dragonstone, Stannis Baratheon read Ned's Raven again and again. The truth burned in his hand like fire. Joffrey was not the true king. Robert's children were all lies. Beside him, a red woman smiled. "Your time has come, Lord Stannis. The wolf has howled. Now the flame must burn." But Stannis only said one thing: "Tell the smiths to prepare my ships. The throne is mine by right." And far across the sea, Daenerys Targaryen stood on the edge of a balcony, her 3 dragons coiling in the shadows behind her. Her advisor brought news. "The North rises. The realm breaks." She nodded. "Then we cross soon. Let the lions and wolves tear each other apart. When they're done, the dragon returns." But back in Riverrun, Ned Stark received one more raven. It bore no seal, no signature, just 6 words written in shaky ink: "Arya is alive." In the city, Ned's hands froze. Now, the game wasn't just about thrones. Now it was about getting his daughters back before the lion ripped them apart. The candle burned low in Ned Stark's chamber, casting long shadows across the stone walls of Riverrun. The letter sat before him, worn and smudged, but those 6 words echoed louder than war drums. Arya is alive, in the city. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from something deeper. Relief, hope, and something far more dangerous. Desperation. Catelyn stood behind him, arms crossed tight. If it's a trap, they'll be waiting for you. Cersei knows how much Arya means to us. I know, Ned said softly, and if it's true, I can't leave her there. Robb entered, his face tired but determined. Then I'll go. Let me take men quietly. We'll find her. Bring her home. But Ned shook his head. She won't recognize you. You weren't there when she ran. If anyone can bring her back, it's me. You can't go. Catelyn snapped, her voice cracking. You're leading a war, Ned. You're the only thing holding this alliance together. He looked at her, eyes softer than they had been in weeks. I led this war to protect our family. If I leave her there, then what did I fight for? And so, just as he had once ridden south with only a handful of men, Ned Stark prepared to do so again, but this time in secret, under shadow, as a hunter rather than a lord. He left Robb in command with strict orders: hold Riverrun, prepare for Tywin's return, and protect the Riverlands from the east. As dawn broke, Ned and 5 of his most trusted men slipped away under fog and silence. No banners, no horns, just cloaks, grit, and purpose. The road to King's Landing had changed. The fields that once bore crops were now charred and salted. Bandits ruled the woods. Refugees huddled by rivers, starving and sick. The realm was breaking, one village at a time, and above it all the shadow of the Iron Throne stretched far and cruel. Inside the Red Keep, Sansa Stark moved like a ghost, silent, careful, watched from every corner. Cersei kept her close, parading her at court, dressing her in Lannister red. But behind Sansa's calm eyes was fire. She had heard whispers. Arya, alive, somewhere in the slums. A baker's boy claimed she'd seen a little girl with a wooden sword, hiding with actors and thieves. Sansa couldn't confirm it, but her heart clung to the rumor like a prayer. One night she slipped a message into a chamber pot knowing Varys' spies collected such trash. 4 words scratched into the parchment. Arya lives. Find father. Varys found it, and Varys has always acted. It was he who sent the message that reached Ned in Riverrun. Not out of kindness, but balance. Chaos was spreading too fast, and if the wolf and the lion destroyed each other too soon, the realm would be lost before any dragon or flame could rise. When Ned reached the outskirts of King's Landing, he saw it with new eyes, not as a lord returning to court, but as a hunter walking into a beast's den. The gates were guarded heavily. Gold cloaks roamed the alleys, and spies, so many spies' eyes in every window, ears in every cup of wine. But there was still one path into the city where gold didn't reach: the sewers. Ned, swallowing his pride and disgust, crept through the same passage Varys had once shown him years ago. Wet, dark, and crawling with rats, but it was the only way. They emerged into the city at nightfall, hidden among the filth and stink of Flea Bottom. The streets were louder here, fighting, crying, laughter, life barely held together by wine and hope. And there, in a forgotten alley near the ruins of an old theater, a beggar girl danced with a wooden sword. Ned froze. She turned, sharp-eyed, breathing heavy, dirty face, torn clothes, but the eyes, those eyes were pure Winterfell. Arya, he whispered. She blinked, dropped the sword. Father. And in that moment, the war fell away. The politics, the thrones, the rage, it all disappeared in the sight of his daughter. Alive, he ran to her, pulled her into his arms. She sobbed into his cloak, fists clinging to him like she was afraid he might vanish. But they didn't have long. Varys appeared from the shadows. A reunion worth gold, my lord. But now we must leave. Ned nodded. Help us get out. Varys smiled faintly. Of course, but know this. Cersei already knows you're in the city. The lion is awake. And as bells rang from the Red Keep, signaling a new royal decree, Ned Stark turned to flee the city once more, this time with Arya at his side, and every Lannister soul hunting him in the dark.